Hey, you guys, and welcome to part 2 of the book club discussion for Old Man's War by John Scalzi. And of course, I guess if you guys haven't seen part 1, I'll link it down below. But this is a spoiler discussion about Old Man's War by John Scalzi. And this is going to feature part 2, which is chapters 7 through 12. And of course, I'll also link the book club's creators' videos as well, part 1 and part 2 of his. And let's get started. So in this one, we're following John Perry from him being like a newbie to like becoming a soldier in his training, and to kind of being a veteran in this part. And I really loved how it flowed from one part to the next. Nothing got boring, nothing got like draggy or anything. And I like how you see enough of everything that happens to a point where like you're interested, but it doesn't drag on to that point where you're just like, really? I'm really getting good at this yawning on cue thing. So let's talk about the Master Sergeant who they meet, who is kind of like at first they just kind of think he's like a cliche, like funny movie comedy, like drill sergeant person. He's just gonna be all mushy and gushy at them at the end. No, he dissuades them of this notion like right away. And for some reason, when I was just like, whenever I heard him talk, like, I would just imagine him just yelling like Major Payne. Like I'm not sure if you guys have seen that movie. Features Damon Wayans, I believe. And I just kept imagining, like, no matter what he was saying, like he was yelling it. And I was just like, yeah, my brain. I'm not sure what I was thinking of when I first read this, but I was definitely thinking of it now. He kind of like shows them a video actually of like soldiers like dying and getting eaten by alien races and stuff like that. And he just wants them to know that this training is serious, that this thing is like serious. He also talks a bit about other stuff, and like one of the things though that I heard him mention was like Marines killed a lot of CDF soldiers or whatever. It was during one of his rants, like when he's training them, he's making them run some miles. But what he basically told them, I will find something to hate about every single one of you. Like he was asking questions, people would raise their hands, he would make them run. Okay, and one of the things that I noticed with the Marines killing CDF soldiers is like, I need some more information on this. Like, did this happen on Earth? Like, I'm just going off in my head, like this probably isn't even really relevant as what's to become, but like little nuggets at that make me wonder, because I know there's more books in this set in this universe, so I just wonder if it's ever like explained, like the whole war thing that happened. But maybe that's just me. But it was funny because while he was finding something to hate about like every single person, like it didn't matter, race, religion, just like the most random, a clog dancer. It was just like, and then he would make them run. And of course the last one standing there is John, and he's just like, I feel like you're lying or something. But then he starts asking him all these questions, and he finds out that he was an advertiser sort of person, and the sergeant is just like, oh my god, that's awesome. And it turns out he has like a tattoo of something that he did, and he still, just because of that, he still like will be like, well, just because of that, I'm gonna make you like in charge, and they're gonna hate you, stuff like that, and you better run now. So everyone's running, and you just like him because he's such a, it's like, you know what he's preparing them for, and it's kind of like, you go Master Sergeant. I liked him. If they ever finally get this turned into a movie, I will be like front row and center. Okay. There's also the fact that he was showing them like how preconceived notions of like what people look like will determine, well, let me just put it for you. You know, you guys watched it, and you know, he shows a scary one and he shows an innocent looking one, and it's the innocent one looking that turns out to be some kind of cannibal or whatever, and the other one's like a pacifist, and it's like, well, yeah, people are not always what they seem, and lives are not always what they seem. I like, this is good theory. They should already know this being this old, but apparently not. And I like that at one point he talked about like, just because they're old, he's like, we get you because you have all of this experience and know what we're kind of fighting for. There's a discussion. He's also, I also hate you because you have all these years of like bad habits built up, and you're kind of set in your way, and it's like, that's stupid. And I like how, like, even though, you know, their brains have been transferred into this new body, they're still who they are, who they used to be. I'm not saying that war is not going to change them or anything, but it just like, it just makes you think a little bit about stuff. I wrote some more notes. So who owns waters? So like one of the things I was talking about with the brain transfer, like John, who like had previously had to do with water, like he didn't like it because apparently when he was younger he fell into like a pool covering, and even though he, you know, he obviously survived, but like being under that water just set off all his phobias. So the mind is like one of the most powerful things that's going on in this universe. And then for some reason, like during this book, especially later on, like in part 3 where they're describing battles, I kept getting Starship Troopers like flashback intermittently. Like it's been a while since I watched that movie too, so I'm not even sure why it's popped in my brain. But it's very similar in that whole going off to war to fight and like intergalactic kind of stuff. So I definitely need to buy that movie again. There's a trilogy. It's technically a trilogy, but the other 2 movies, let's not talk about them. But I would love to see this become a movie, this one. But anyway, there's some more, like, when they're done with the camp and they go off into their own, like, you know, they're out in the front lines. You can already tell that you're going to get that deaths are just going to be a part of the thing. Like, we'll meet characters and you'll either like them or you'll hate them, and then they'll die. Like, one of the first ones was like Watson's death, and he's just like a happy gun trigger kind of person, kind of stupid, and he just dies. And even though he dies, John just still kind of goes a little bit crazy and tries to save him, like stuff like that. And then people that we know from the old farts like just start dropping off basically like each chapter. And the first one was like Maggie's death, and hers was I believe she got like, they were trying to do something, but she managed to write a haiku and everything before she died and send them off to them. And she's like, you know, death, I'm just ready for it. And it was kind of sad because it's just like the first line of the chapter, and you're like, you just hit me with that. Every time somebody would die, they would do that. Like Thomas, the first line is like, Thomas died of something he ate, which is vaguely like, at first you're just like, what? Like that's ironic a little bit, but then you realize it's one of the ones where they kind of showcase the fact that we're fighting all these alien races, but we don't exactly know like what the aliens look like every time. And in this thing, they just think it's a fungus or a goop. It turns out to be like sentient, and it like went into his mouth and suffocated him like right away. It was like dire, and I was just like, oh my god, poor Thomas. Like just so many, they just died in so many random kind of ways that kind of just showcase that, you know, war is war, and not everyone goes out, I guess, like Justus said, in a blaze of glory. Although in a little way, like when Susan died, like she like was still like fighting, like launching rockets at the opposite ship, and while she didn't do a lot of damage, she managed to do some damage. But in the movie, you know, when they kind of do that, it's like usually like, wow, they like killed him right before, but not in this case, and that was a little bit more closer to reality. And in terms of meeting other new people, like we have like Bender, who used to be like a senator, an ambassador, and a secretary for the United States together. And he's like, I feel like we should attempt peace with more of these people, like make a peace treaty. And even though, you know, he has a point, he's not exactly going about it like the right way. So like they're in the middle of battle with these people, and they had kind of stopped, right? And like he goes up to them while they're doing some kind of ritual. They don't know exactly what they're saying, and he's trying to like make peace talk, and they just kill him like so fast and in an interesting way. And then, you know, after the battle, they're talking about it, and it's kind of like one of the other characters was like, I think her name was Louisa. I hope that's how it's pronounced. But she was like, well, I didn't say I didn't agree with him. I do, but you don't just go up to a bunch of like people who's like, you basically just killed some of their like family and friends, and you like invaded their planet and talk about peace. Like, you know what, you're an a-hole, and if you kind of did that to me, it happened. But it was also kind of sad because she was talking about like her background is that she used to be like, I think it was her family was a prince or something, and there was a coup, and her father's dead, her mother's dead, her uncle, her uncle and his wife, and like all their kids, and she like barely survived. And it's like, she's like, I get it, and I want to get to a position one day where I can make changes through the rake. And it's sad because then she dies like 2 weeks like later, and you're just like, it kind of makes, just, you get so attached to these characters a little bit, and then they just die, and you're just like sitting up there like, oh, that's just sucks. And then of course the Ghost Brigade is mentioned once again. Like when I first read this novel, I just knew that one line. I was just like, something's gonna happen. And then they mentioned it again in part 2, and something's gonna happen. They mentioned it again, but I'm not probably gonna talk about it until part 3 because they didn't really talk about it in this part. But you see, there's connections now starting to form up. And so last but not least, which is really sad for me, was Alan's death. Because, you know, he's been with John on this entire journey, and you sort of know what's coming. I think if you're reading the books, like, part of you is hoping that it doesn't come. Like, they're killing people off steadily, and John and Perry have been, like, buddied up this whole time. You're like, I hope they make it to the end. And, like, he doesn't die technically. Like, he dies technically in battle, but he dies because, like, the enemy shot down their ship and stuff. And, you know, he's just like, John is like, he's above John in the tree line because he's impaled on something, and John can't look away, and he's almost to the point of death himself. And he's just like, he's talking about like constellations. He's like, I hope I can see the constellations where I'm going. And it's just so sad because, you know, you miss Alan. Oh God, it was just so sad. I'm still sad right now. I need to get over this. Like, these aren't real people. So his death was just kind of like no one's safe kind of thing, because, you know, you don't see the other old farts like a lot during this. Like, even though you're attached to them, like, they're not, you don't get like all these updates about them all the time. All you do is you get updated to their death. So we saw Maggie, Thomas, and Susan go, and you're maybe part of you is thinking that Alan's safe or something because, you know, they're slowly killing off people. And then Harry and Susan pop up kind of randomly during this battle. We don't see them, but apparently they're going to be in the same. They were told they were on another ship, so I guess we'll see if they manage to survive. Because are they really just going to kill off everybody in John's life? Like, wow. And then at the very end, we get to see the thing. And that is awesome. Kathy, John's wife, is apparently there or whatever. We're not sure if it's just like a death thing or just like something that's real. We'll kind of do in a little way. But she doesn't know him. So that's going to be interesting to find out. I mean, I really enjoyed this. Second part, things happened. I was choked up. And the sad thing is, I'm still like upset about Ella's death. Like, I didn't know it was coming. Like, I didn't know any of their deaths was coming. I've read this before, okay? And it's like somewhere in between that time and now, I thought, oh look, the stuff is going to change. That's kind of like what I like about rereading books. Like, even though I know it's going to happen, that, you know, it's a good, well-written book when it still makes you feel the same way. Because I still feel all of their deaths and everything that happened, and it's interesting conversation, and the witty banter is sort of still there between everybody. And one of the talking points that Justus brought up was they all have like a breaking point, so to speak. So they're on this planet, obviously you guys know, and he's just stomping like these 1-inch like opponents, like whatever, because, you know, they're basically matched in a lot of things except when they get to face-to-face combat, apparently, because they're so small. And he just like breaks down, and I'm just like, realistically, this probably happens to a lot of people. They always get to this point, and I know, and Alan is just like, I'm repressed, so this hasn't happened to me yet. But then they talk about all their other soldiers experiencing why they broke down and stuff, and then they start talking about what they miss most about Earth, and everyone's just kind of looking at John, because it's like, you know, he mentions his wife this whole time. He's like, I just miss being married. And everyone just goes silent, like, looking at him, and they're just like, okay. They're just not bringing down the room. But they kind of open that chapter with Alan talking about, like, how the old planet, universe, whatever, isn't the same one that they come from. So they start talking about multiverse and stuff like that. And I wonder if that's just a thing that the author was just, like, speculating on, or if maybe like somewhere in the universe of the other books, like, this is going to be a thing. Are there going to be like multiple like people of the same one? Like, is there going to be another Alan or Maggie somewhere in the universe? Like, is it going to be like that, or are they talking just that it's just changing? Maybe I was confused on that whole part. I don't know, but it'd be interesting. Or maybe I just explained it differently, because, you know, you think in your head doesn't always come out right in your mouth. But basically, oh, the one last thing I want to talk about is like how they were talking about how like every battle is not the same, because they meet a new species who are different every time in battle. So that's why the CDF rate is so high in killing, and like on Earth's forces, the only thing that their military had over is that they knew exactly what kind of weapons and stuff that the other guy has. And in this one we don't, because sometimes we meet less intelligent ones or more intelligent ones, or just something frankly like the fungi thing that we can't beat, because you know it's just like everywhere. It's just not worth it. One of the things that we were doing when Alan died was going to like fight this war over this planet that was more like our Earth planet. That one time it was named Coral, but they considered naming it Eden. And one of the things I liked about the colonization of that one is that the people who lived there basically decided to live more off the land and not do what we did to this planet. Because you have to wonder, like, what that one time what's going to happen to this planet because of all the things we did to it, and if we will learn better if we ever go like beyond the stars. Like, that's a thing, and it's a wonder. And I really enjoy this novel so far, and I really look forward to part 3 and reading part 3 and maybe finally getting my hands on a physical copy of this book and maybe buying other books in the thing, because now I'm pumped for it. You guys let me know your thoughts down below, and I don't know how long this video is. I will see you guys later. Bye.